professions that people may pursue, where they gain lots of vitality elements, but because of the way in which they live their life, they don't get life elements. Can you think of somebody? Why would you say he doesn't get any life elements? Why would you say he doesn't get life elements?
Well, what about if he just has a political agenda and he doesn't have any spiritual life?
Doesn't he?
Well, I'm just saying.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm just making.
As far as I know, he believes in God and he goes to church every Sunday. Well, I was... What? Sorry? Well, there are plenty of bankers that go to church. I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of people who get lots of vitality. You get vitality elements. Why? Why do you get vitality elements? Good actions. Okay, so think of people who are doing lots of good actions, such as... Who does it? I mean, what? Cleaners. Anybody else? What are the classic people, professions, where you get you get lots of vitality elements, you do good? Nurses, social workers, all right? Okay, so they gain lots of good vitality elements. Now, what happens if they don't have a spiritual life and they don't have any positive life elements? What happens? They become very drained, and then... May become resentful, and how might they carry out their activities, their jobs? Reluctantly. And there have been certain things written in the papers recently about nurses. What have they been saying?
That they're mistreating old people.
Yes. So these are people, so you can imagine when they went into the profession, they're probably very enthusiastic, but after some years of gaining all these negative vitality elements, why do you think they may have become like that? Maybe they're not getting life elements, maybe they don't go to church. Maybe they're not having their spirit, their soul refreshed. Because if you're just giving out all the time, you need to replenish this. So they get lots of vitality elements, but sometimes if you listen to the conversations, they're often very cynical and critical about the people they're taking care of. Yes, and often quite uncaring. But then those are the ones who, I know this is an overgeneralization, was the ones who don't have much of a spiritual life. But the ones who have a more of a spiritual life are gaining the life elements, which means that despite giving out a lot, they're able to continue giving out with a freshness of genuine care and sincerity. Yes, which enables them to continue doing that kind of thing and remaining fresh-spirited, fresh with a fresh heart. Every day becomes like a new day, new experiences, as opposed to just getting worn out and worn down. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's not that they're bad people, it's just that in order for our spirit to grow, we need to spend time having a retreat. And so that's why, what does the Bible say? 6 days you shall work. So is work good? Work is good. Work is very good. But on 1 day a week you should rest, the Sabbath. This is a time to withdraw from the world of work, a time to pray, a time to study, to read, to worship, a time to spend time with the family, and just to refresh one's life. And then you go out into the next day, the next week, with a fresh mind, a new beginning. Yeah, so you find that people just work, and don't take time to relax or to engage in recreate their soul, their spirit. They get very, very drained and worn out. Yeah. So that's the way it is then. So that's why I should go and have a retreat from time to time. Shouldn't work 7 days a week. Okay, what's the principles of spiritual growth? I don't know what that arrow's doing there, but anyway. Oh, there we are. So the spirit grows through the give and take, give and receive between life and vitality elements. So when we get this life and vitality elements, then our spirit grows. We need both. And we get grace from the good spirits. We're doing good things. Those good spirits give joy, strength, and healing. And the spirit can only grow while in the flesh. So without a physical body, we can't gain vitality elements. So our spirit is unable to grow. So the body then should follow the mind, and the mind should follow the good purpose, its conscience, and then the physical self then becomes wholesome. So you find, people live a good life, they tend to stay relatively healthy. That's definitely an overgeneralization. And the important point here is to put truth into action. So, and growth also takes place in stages. It doesn't happen overnight. And what determines where we go when we die? Well, if we do good actions, then we gain good vitality elements and life elements, and we become a good person. So when we die, we go to a good place in the spiritual world. We go to a place where there are other people who also lived a similar kind of life. So you go to a place where your friends are. If, on the other hand, you live a bad life, do lots of evil actions, you get lots of evil vitality elements, and you turn out to be rather a nasty, unpleasant person. And then when you die, you go to a place with other nasty, unpleasant people, and that's, we could say, is hell. And the point is, a lot of this is decided by our own free will. It's not determined. At the end of the day, we make choices, we make decisions. So in that sense, it's not God who decides whether a person enters heaven or hell upon his death. It's the Spirit himself, depending upon the decisions that we take and the actions that we do. And so, I mean, can you imagine if you're a very selfish person and you live a very quite a nasty person, what's it like being together with people who are like yourself? Lots of selfish people together. What do they end up doing? Fighting. So you can only be selfish when there are other people who will give to you. Isn't that true? Yeah, if you're very self-centered, you can only function if there are other people who put up with you, who aren't self-centered. But self-centered people are usually incredibly intolerant towards other people who are self-centered and selfish. And so you have this life of eternal conflict. And whereas if you're a generous person and you go to a place filled with other generous people like yourself, is that a nice place to be? Yeah, it's like heaven. There's a very good book written about this. The best book I've ever read about this is by someone called C.S. Lewis. You know C.S. Lewis? He wrote the Narnia stories, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And he also wrote a book called The Great Divorce. Anybody read it? No? That's one book I read when I was at school. It's only a thin little book, but it's the best explanation I've come across anywhere about the next world and what happens when you get there. Because he writes about it, and he talks about the grey city, which is hell. And he says in the grey city, it stretches on forever, and there's street after street after street and rows of houses. But there's only one person living per street. Why is that? Because every time they meet somebody, they get into a fight with their neighbours, and so they move out. And so people can't bear to live next to anybody else. They can't bear to have any neighbours because they're always fighting. And he describes that there's a bus which goes to another realm. And so he talks about these people from the grey city catching the bus. And of course, on the way, lots of them have arguments and fall out with each other, and they get thrown off the bus. And eventually the bus arrives in this other place. And it's very, very bright and full of colours. And it says that these spirits then, from the grey city, they get out. And it's incredibly painful for them. Because walking on the grass is like walking on pins and needles. Because the grass feels incredibly sharp and solid to them. Anyway, it talks about how, their relatives come along to greet them and welcome them and try and encourage them to stay. And some will say, oh, it's horrible here. People are too nice. I'm going back to... You know what I mean? It's a very interesting psychological study of how people react when they're in a place full of nice, good people, in a very bright place. It's very interesting. And some of them stay, but in order to be able to stay, they have to change something. They have to let go of something. And it's a very interesting account. Anyway, well worth reading. Very, very thin book called The Great Divorce. So what determines where we go? That's all. At the end of the day, that's all it is. And so Jesus illustrated this very well. This is a passage. Try and read. You can read it, Martin, can you? You haven't got your opera glasses there? Okay. So this is Jesus told a parable. One of the parables he told about the sheep and the goats. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him. He will sit on his throne in heavenly glory, and all the nations will be gathered before him. All the nations. What does that imply then?
All people.
There are going to be lots of different nations. This idea everybody has to belong to one nation is unbiblical. All the different nations will get gathered before him. And he'll separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He'll put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on his left, Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or needing clothes, or sick or in prison, and did not help you?" And he will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did not do for the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. So what do you think of that then? Is that hopeful or not hopeful?
It's a warning.
Is it?
It's a warning.
It's a warning. It's very hopeful. Because what are the criteria for deciding whether people go to heaven or hell?
How they treat one another.
How they treat people.
It hasn't always been traditional Christian doctrine.
No, it's not. Is there anything there about belonging to a particular religion or church? Does that make any difference? No, that doesn't decide it. The only thing that decides it is how much you love and care for others. That's all that matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter, honestly speaking, what you believe, because when you go to the spiritual world, you don't sit an exam to see if you believe the right things. When you go into the spiritual world, it's not an interview. Which particular religious group did you belong to or didn't belong to? They don't ask you what your nationality is, or your race, or your colour, or the male or female, or anything like that. It's all that matters is that. How much you live for the sake of others, how much you care about others. That's all that counts at the end of the day. It doesn't make any difference whether you belong to the Unification Church or the Church of England. That's the end of the day, all that counts. And that's exactly what Jesus said when he talked about the parable of the Good Samaritan. Did I tell you, the parable of the Good Samaritan? Yeah. Who is my neighbour? Yeah. The Good Samaritan, the Samaritan was the one who loved his neighbour. He wasn't Jewish, but he was the one who was going to go to heaven, have eternal life. So through that parable also Jesus was saying, it doesn't matter what your nationality is, doesn't matter what your religion is, doesn't matter what your race is. In front of God, none of these things count for whether you go to heaven or not. All that counts